And welcome back to another episode of A Dynasty Mind. I hope you guys are coming back to join us after having a string of wonderful guests, starting with Matt Waldman, and we got Matt Harmon, we have John Law, Elliot Chris, and now this is a person that I've had the pleasure of appearing on his podcast when he was hosting the Fantasy Force back in the days. Now, Andrew, you have gone up from your adventures with PFF, and now you are if I'm got correct, you are a full-time staff at Inside the Pylon, right? Andrew, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, yeah, so right now I am with InsideThePylon.com working on, fantasy football, everything for them. I do a show with another one of our fantasy writers and position scouts, Nick Filato. We are usually on Phantom on Facebook, FANTOM. So you can find some of our shows there. It's been a little quiet during the off season while we get ready and get things prepared for ITP's draft guide, which is a massive process, and last year was pretty successful, and this year is that and so much more.
Awesome. I know that I'm looking forward to hearing more about that, and perhaps we'll get a little bit more about that tonight, what the draft guide entails. But Inside the Pylon has been a fantastic resource for me to kind of learn about football, just not only in the fantasy sense, but translating some of those breakdowns that you guys have. I know a lot of the people there work their asses off just to get us a lot of good content, and it helps me learn, and then for me as a dynasty person to translate those things. So which would be your focus there in ITP? Or do you do all the positions? Do you focus on a certain side of football? What is it?
So I mean, like you said, the knowledge there is just so impressive. And I'm going to deviate really quick before I get back onto this. I was actually digging through our Twitter DMs, and you were actually the first person to put me onto ITP way back when I was just writing on my own. I had started a running back evaluation process, and you had told me, hey, check out Inside the Pylon. They do these great breakdowns. Even though there's not a lot of fantasy content on there, you should really give them a look. Now, I work with those guys, and it's impressive. And in fact, the project that we were talking about back then, I've gotten a ton of input from all the incredible people over at ITP, and hopefully that will be revived a little later this offseason. But I do particularly enjoy scouting the running back position, but this last year or so, I've really made it my mission to soak up as much about wide receivers as possible. So, anytime the guys at ITP are talking in Slack about, any sort of particular prospect or just things they look for, I make sure I am all over it. So, there are incredible offensive scouts there. Joe Ferriola was someone I hung out with down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl, and I made sure I was getting every bit of knowledge from him, along with Matty Brown. Mike Nuttall is doing cornerbacks for the draft guide, and if you want to know what a wide receiver does well, you want to know what a cornerback does to match it. So kind of understanding the whole process and the battle that happens on the outside there, it's been kind of my main thing to get as much knowledge into my very large cranium as possible.
Oh man, you have to be a person who really loves football to do this, digging into every facet, every position, schemes, all of that, and you're getting a lot of that from ITP.
Yeah, man, those guys, they are. It's just it's every day is almost like a slam dunk competition of knowledge. Just people come in every single day and they're just throwing down windmills left and right.
Right. So again, people, this is a fantastic resource for you if you want to just learn about football. If you want to apply some of those things, they do have a fantasy spin to their process as well. So tonight we kind of want to dig into what your sense is about fantasy football, because you have been involved with fantasy football for quite some time. More recent than I in the dynasty realm, but nonetheless, very impressive work. We've been in a league together, and I've seen your work. I've seen the way that you've tried to build a team, and I was excited for the directions that it is going to. Unfortunately, I couldn't continue with that league, but I don't know where it is right now. I think Todd has taken over.
Yes, yeah. Todd from PA on Twitter. He's done an interesting job. He stepped in as commish. We knocked out some rules and some voting immediately because we had about 3 or 4 teams to fill. So yeah, they have their dispersal draft done, and now it's all about trying to figure out, the new guys and what they think of the teams they've gotten through dispersal draft. Having gone through that same process, I know you come away with a team and you sort of still want to tweak here and there afterwards. So there have been some trade offers coming out.
Great. Fantastic. So before we begin diving into your mind, you have a ton of knowledge to share, I'm sure. Let's talk a little bit about the combine that just happened. What were some of your impressions coming into the weekend? What are some of the things that you took away, and what are some of the things that you will be paying more attention to?
I love the combine. I know athletic testing, there are people who will vehemently defend it and attack it. I think, look, these things all have to kind of go together. If you see someone that is quick on the field, you want to make sure they're running quick in workouts. If you see something that clashes with what you've noticed on film, you kind of got to dig in and wonder why a little bit. So because we're putting together a puzzle on each individual player, you want to get as many pieces as possible. And the combine is a corner piece there. You want to make sure you can confirm what you're seeing on field with the numbers that are coming up there. I know there was something last year about Dalvin Cook running, I think it was a 3-cone that was slower than we expected. And Matty Brown, one of the ITP guys, had a piece up there about when he changes direction, he is taking extra steps to do it. So he has a unique running style in that sense, which is why his 3-cone time wasn't as good. Yes, he can change direction quickly, but it's because of his quick footwork, not necessarily because he can burst into a direction. So when things clash like that, you got to try and understand your process a little more and what am I seeing on film. So the testing itself is fun enough, and then you get to see like the wide receiver gauntlet drills. Those I think are very important when you're looking for guys that are just not just natural athletes. I know we hear that phrase thrown around a lot. It's a little ambiguous, but natural football athletes. So you get to see guys who they know where they want their hands to be. These are where like the possession receivers get to kind of distinguish themselves from the crowd. So I love the combine. I love kind of going back and looking at things and catching up on players that I didn't watch so much of. And I mean, it was great. Look, Barkley put on a show, Nick Chubb right there with him. We got to see a lot of great things.
Oh, absolutely. And I never discount that part. I know people say, oh, all you need to do is look into film and you'll need everything that you need to know. And then there's always another camp that says, no, the athletic testing numbers are useful. It's helped to standardize some of the players who may not have the same opportunities or have faced the same competitions. And all of those are valid, and we just need to bring a balance to it. And I think you brought it out the best, is that, it is a useful tool. You get to see things. You're using your eyes more so than following just the numbers itself. And if it aligns, great. If it conflicts, well, what's the reason for that? The Dalvin Cook nugget is actually very, this is the first time I heard of it. And for you guys to notice it, I know that, that's why I go to ITP to kind of find these nuggets that it's not shared about anywhere else. So, yeah, did you want to add something to that?
So I mean, sort of this year's version of that was Jordan Lasley, the UCLA wide receiver who ran a little slower than people were expecting, especially because he's a big vertical threat there. So I have a little bit of work done on Lasley. I have most of his write-up done for the fantasy section of ITP's guide. And now I'm kind of poking around, seeing what the scouts saw, seeing kind of where he's been placed for us. Because I know he was someone that came in and he was the person that everyone said, oh, we got to watch his 40. He could run one of the fastest 40s. He's such a long threat. I kind of want to dive into that a little more. And I even have to get into the breakdown. I think they call it like the flying 20 or the flying 40, that second 20 yards inside, because that's the true measure of long speed. And, maybe the first 10 yards is getting out of a stance. So it's about putting all these things together that maybe even in something like a 40-yard dash, we're not just collecting one data point. We are collecting splits at 10, 20, and 40 yards. And using these is such a big thing. So just again, if every player is a puzzle, these athletic testing numbers have to confirm what you're seeing on film. And when they don't, again, it's all about revisiting. So that's where, Matty Brown noticed these extra steps that Dalvin Cook was taking last year. And I have to dive back in on Lasley to see, what's the difference between his numbers and what we see on film.
Yeah, and those will, for me at the least, it will translate to finding out players that others may be down on because of numbers, because the film didn't go well, but you're noticing these little things. So diving into that, that's a bit of my process. Let's talk about your process. You being a Dynasty owner, you being a Dynasty player for a couple of years now. How have you developed your process, and how much are you modifying it still?
So I'm always modifying. I think you always have to kind of tweak these things as you go. I think anyone that finds a process and just sticks to it, much like how the league and offenses evolve, will be kind of left behind if they only have their one process that they don't add to. I will say I do have sort of two answers for this question, and they go towards different ends. One is specifically for Dynasty players, and one is for analysts who are also playing Dynasty, because I know we get a span of people who come to check out our work. So I want to knock out the analyst part first, because I feel like that's where I make most of my mistakes, is when I'm sort of taking out maybe my first inkling or my emotional response to a player. I try and sift through that quickly, so I'm getting back down to, looking at a player's tape, and evaluating him and figuring out what I like about someone. And that's usually where I make my mistakes, at least when I try to transfer cold analysis to fantasy. And I can give an example from our first Dynasty League together, which was my first Dynasty League. This was about 2 years ago. I did my dispersal draft. I came away, I think I had the 102. This was LaQuan Treadwell's year, so I'm trying to remember who the 101. That was Zeke, right?
Zeke, LaQuan, yes, that was the year.
Yeah. So Treadwell, I watched his film. He's pretty good. I still have him on my team right now because he was who I drafted. The guy I really liked and thoroughly enjoyed watching was Ohio State receiver and future New Orleans Saint, Michael Thomas. Their careers have kind of gone in different directions. I thoroughly enjoyed watching Thomas. I thought he would be a major player at the next level. But so many people were on Treadwell that, I was wondering, am I not seeing something with Treadwell that I'm seeing with Thomas? What am I? And I immediately went back and said, maybe I'm making the mistake. So I went with the consensus 102, picked Treadwell. And then the next year I got to draft Leonard Fournette. So you can tell how my team did. So I think as an analyst, sometimes you have to remember being a fantasy player is part of this. And for people who just play fantasy, for people who aren't going to, cram 20 hours of film into a day somehow, it's about having fun. We always have to remember that. I think that's such a key piece of everything, is we're playing this for fun. Maybe if you're in a high stake league where you can take home 10 grand, maybe a little more business gets into it, but I like to enjoy playing fantasy. That's why I think I do my best when I'm drafting guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, because I liked his tape. I loved watching him. I'm going to enjoy rooting for him. Same with someone like Leonard Fournette, when the debate among fantasy people was, can a guy who hasn't shown he can catch, can he produce at an NFL level? Can he be this fantasy person that people want him to be? Drafted Leonard Fournette last year. I'm pretty happy with it. He's even shown some receiving work as well. Look, Chris Ivory's out of town now, so we know he's going to have a little more work ahead of him. It's about trusting your gut. It's about going with that first inkling. If you like a player, you should draft them, if only because it will enhance you watching their games and rooting for them. So to get into the process point of this is, for me, I have to like the player that I'm drafting. I have to have a reason I'm drafting them. If not, I'm not using that draft pick to enhance my fantasy football experience, which I think is so key.
Yeah, I think you put it very well, and a lot of people, myself included, I have LaQuan Treadwell in his couple of teams. I've even tried trading for him because I couldn't accept the idea that I might be wrong when he came out as a rookie, and I want to give him another chance. And now it's year three. He had not been able to even surpass Jarius Wright and his own team. He's still stuck behind now two pretty amazing top 10 wide receivers in Diggs and Thielen. You're wondering, where is his opportunity coming from? Does he even have a chance now? And every year that goes past by, it's a new chance for new rookies to come in and take his place. But the important key I want people to take away from what you just shared is that you have to trust your analysis. You have to enjoy fantasy football. And I think that those are very important things to factor in, because we can't have fun if we just focus on trying to get the best value, trying to be right. Doesn't work, you'll burn out very quickly.
Right. And I think this might be my biggest clash sometimes with people in trade negotiations, is that I'm offered a good deal for a player. I'm offered a deal that if it's on, Twitter, maybe these things kind of break 50-50 sometimes in the voting. Guys like Derrick Henry, I have him in literally one league because I haven't been able to get him in other ones. And whether that was because I was taking over orphan teams or, whatever the case is, the first ever startup draft I took part in, made sure I got Derrick Henry. He's now a hot commodity. I'm going to get very good offers for him now that DeMarco Murray's not in the picture. I don't want to give him up because this is the only league I have him in, aside from the fact that I know I can sell him at his top value, but I also know that I'm not going to get the 103 for him, which is about the least amount that I would take for him. Someone could offer me the 102 where I know I'm going to get Darius Geis or Nick Chubb if he finds himself in a much better landing spot. Personally, that's how I feel the 102 goes. So something like this, it's all about, I have this guy, I want to enjoy this. This is the one team I have him on. I don't necessarily want to deal him away. You can give me the 103 and a wide receiver 2. I know that's a good deal. I'm sorry, I just don't want to do this. So I'm very upfront about that in negotiations. I don't necessarily want to give this guy away.
Sure.
So sure. I think that is a large part of my process that does kind of clash sometimes with people who are making this like a business deal, who know and have their value charts out. That's unfortunately just not me.
Yeah. And that is your process, and that's what makes Dynasty and fantasy football fun for you. I have the same. I can definitely empathize with that. I know sometimes the value is great, but this is the only league where I have this certain player. And, you have to blow me away. And the only thing that can blow me away from, parting with I'm just going to go with one example, Dalvin Cook right now, you have to give me Saquon Barkley to get Dalvin off of me. Great. So yeah, fun is part of your process. That's what I'm hearing right now. And I hope that for our audience who are out there wanting to learn about Dynasty, to never forget that fun and personal value sometimes just have to be part of it, and we'll get to enjoy the game much more.
Right. And certainly, when we, you had mentioned, how do you evolve your process, is just, for me at least, it's about kind of opening up things a little more, watching a few more guys, being open in my evaluations, seeing what to like about a player for me is pretty easy. I can find something I like about just about every player I watch. There's no, college prospect or NFL player that I watch and just go, he's bad at everything. He's bad at everything. I don't know why he has pads on. Because there aren't guys like that. If they're wearing pads and they're playing D1 football, there's something to enjoy. If they're wearing pads and they're on an NFL team, there's something they do well. So modifying my process is sometimes maybe realizing when I've misfired on a player, when I see something I really like, and I'm trying to think from that specific team who's someone, the Dynasty team I had referenced earlier, who's someone I didn't want to give up Tajay Sharp. He was someone when I was at PFF, I had watched a lot of UMass games. I had done some charting for UMass games. I liked watching Tajay Sharp in college. I enjoyed his kind of lead up to the draft. I liked all the reports that came out of Titans camp when he was a rookie. I enjoyed the fact that he was a starter for them. And sometimes you see the product and you say, so what's happening here? Is he's not producing quite like I thought he was going to. I didn't think he was going to set the world on fire, but I thought he would be a occasional wide receiver 2, mostly wide receiver 3. Not quite what he's been, and I know it's still early in his career, but a team doesn't go out and add, Corey Davis and Taywan Taylor and Eric Decker because they like their wide receiver room. So realizing that they're not just doing this for the stats, NFL players aren't, wholly going out there and doing this for the stats. Everyone wants to compete. Everyone wants to contribute to their team. What is preventing Tajay Sharp from being this contributor? Is he just limited athletically? Does he not have the frame for the game? Adjusting these things and kind of coming off and realizing that I loved watching this player and always will, but in a limited roster size league or in a spot where I'd have to make moves, he was someone who ultimately had to go for me.
Yes, and that is a fantastic example. And I definitely have a lot of my own experiences with that too. And at this, you're mentioning one of the important point is when things don't go the way that you expected them, at some point you have to let go. And that's unfortunately the part of fantasy football where you have to admit, you have to be very honest with your own thought process. So moving on, tell us a little bit in this time of the off season where, there's no real live football played on Sunday, but values are moving around. We're having new information that comes up. In this past few weeks, we have a couple of trades that go on, and we're anticipating more trades, and free agency is about to open up. How do you use your process to help you guide you through this time where value fluctuate so wildly, even though there's not a single football being played on Sunday?
So this is a very dangerous part of the offseason for me because I tend to not want to make moves around this time because I think, exactly like you said, we are so far out from live football being played in front of us. Again, it's why we're so glued to the combine. It's why, there's as much that we try to do to kind of fill the space. Part of that is dynasty trades. And again, which kind of goes hand in hand with selecting guys that I like and enjoy watching, is I get this time to go back now and review and look at their season, look at the season that just passed and see why they did or didn't produce like I was expecting them to. So right now is when I'm kind of watching a little extra film, trying to refine where I am at on some guys. So as trades are happening right now, in March, I'm a little off it. I usually wait until kind of late March, mid-April. Then I'll start kind of throwing out some moves. Again, I'm not 100%, fixed on that as my strategy, but I think this is an interesting time. You have some guys that, again, like we were talking about Treadwell, you can't give him away right now and be happy with what you're going to get back. But so you can use that as an advantage in other leagues if you want to gamble on him. LaQuan Treadwell is not a bad way to fill out your wide receiver corps on a team. So if you throw out, a fourth and a receiver, a fourth and a running back for him right now, there may be someone that bites on that. So my own kind of evaluation, again, has to come from personal experience. When people offer me trades at this point, if I'm declining them, why am I declining them? Why am I going through this? Which is why it's so important to always put in comments. I know, MFL does a great job kind of letting you talk that out with people. Why am I declining? Why is this guy offering me this player? And then can I take this into another league and say, well, the insert player owner here didn't like him. Let me check over in this league where I do need a third running back or a fourth wide receiver. Can I go and figure out, where can I make a deal and kind of suss these things out, in addition to working on things with guys? Again, anytime someone wants to make a trade, I think you owe it to them to kind of work things out if you're in a position to trade these guys. So I think it's right now is a very dangerous time to make moves, but it's also fun. Again, remember, we're trying to enjoy this. So if you're into getting a new player, go for it.
Yes, I think you put it in a very unique way. What I like about that is your approach is, even though you're not actively doing trades, it doesn't mean you're not doing anything. You're evaluating, you're refining your thoughts, you're getting, it keeps you thinking about a player's value. Where is this player now? Maybe the value will change, maybe the value won't change. And you're just working behind the scenes and challenging your own thoughts with that idea of, why am I declining, or why would I accept a certain offers that being thrown to me? So that's something that's very important, I guess, for us people who want to kind of adopt your approach, to learn that just because you're not actively talking to people about trades, you're not seeking out players from other teams, that you aren't doing anything in the background.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. So we're going to take your process now to apply to some specific players. And one of the reasons why I got into inviting you here is I want to talk about our tweet about Melvin Gordon. Tell me, why do you feel that, you want to buy into a Melvin Gordon?
Okay, so Melvin Gordon, and I should say this is a value built idea for me, because you think back, even this time last year, Melvin Gordon would cost you more than Todd Gurley. Obviously, situations have flipped. Gurley's now just about the 101 out in a startup, and Gordon you can probably get in the mid, maybe the back end of the first round. I haven't done any startups. I would imagine that's about where he has to be. Now, I'm a buyer on Melvin Gordon, and I think if you have maybe a mid to late rookie first, I would consider packaging that with something to try and go out and get Melvin Gordon. Again, I know how much fun it is to have maybe 1-1 through 1-4 in your rookie draft. I know, obviously, those premier guys coming out are a little younger, and there's always the entertainment value of making that rookie draft selection. We can't discount that. I know these picks are treated with such value, and there's a reason why. It's not just the player you're getting, it's the fun of clicking that draft button on them. So without discounting that, anything 105 and above, I'll probably put out for Melvin Gordon with someone else. And I mean, here's why. He's looked like a better NFL player every year. You go back, you look at his rookie season, obviously no touchdowns. That was the rather big story that came out. He quickly turned that around. I think it was his first game. He got a rushing touchdown pretty early on into things. So we kind of knocked that myth out really quick. And then this last season, he has been kind of the fullback that the Chargers wanted him to be. It was something like 280 plus carries, which was the most he's seen so far. Finally broke 1,000 yards rushing, 8 touchdowns on the ground. I think he fell just short of 60 receptions. I want to try and pull that up really quick because I know he was right around there, 55, somewhere thereabouts. And I think had 4 touchdowns receiving. So he's putting together a good resume. He is a complete back. He rushes, he receives, he does both very well. He's been projecting up in his career. He's 24 right now. He should be 25 by the time the season starts. Look, we're talking about a guy that his team is very comfortable giving him the rock. They're comfortable doing it frequently. He leads that rushing attack. Austin Eckler has been one of the most fun players to watch last season. Look, the guy has an incredible story, how often he stayed after workouts when a lot of scouts went home to, work on his game and show a little something extra. And I have Eckler in a 30-team league where you can't pry him away from me. And he's like my RB4. So I love him, and I think that actually helps Melvin Gordon out, that he's carrying the entire load, and he has a decent backup behind him. So what I see when I look at Melvin Gordon is a complete running back who will be getting Forrest Lamp, my top guard from last year, returning to that lineup, free from injury. Look, Feeney did pretty well as a rookie as well. He has a competent offensive line in front of him. He is a good inside runner. He is a more than competent outside runner, and he's a pretty great receiver. Look, Le'Veon Bell and Todd Gurley are changing our expectations of running backs as far as receivers. most backs in the league would be over the moon to receive as well as Melvin Gordon does. So I think he's on a very good offense that will only get better, especially with someone like Mike Williams back into the fold, a little more healthy, one of the top receivers from last year. Look, that is about as complete an offense as the NFL has. I was tweeting a few days ago, because I know we're talking a lot about Saquon Barkley going number 1 overall, the value of a good running back versus a good quarterback. And my theory there, which is what I'm going to say here, and I think this holds true for Melvin Gordon, if you are on a complete offense, the running back is the most dangerous position there. Doesn't mean they're more valuable than a quarterback, and kind of viewing it outside that vacuum, Melvin Gordon is the most dangerous part of the Chargers offense. In an offense that has Phillip Rivers, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Terrell Williams, Hunter Henry, Melvin Gordon is the most dangerous part of that offense.
Oh my gosh, Andrew, you brought in such fantastic support to your argument. I have to say, I'm getting a little bit change in my position around Melvin Gordon just because of you. But there are a lot of worries for me, of course. Melvin Gordon, and this may be because of the recency biases, the things that I remember when I watch him, is that he didn't look electric. You know, it requires him a lot of touches to get to his production. And I think the narrative out there is that's why we're worried about Melvin Gordon when he's going to break down. We might have another guy that's might see an early. He hasn't had correct me if I'm wrong. He hasn't played a full healthy season in his 3 years in the NFL, and he's heading into year 4. Is that correct?
I think so. I should double check, but I think he's got about 14 games last season, something like that. And I know there were a lot of ankle issues as well. So injury history is something that I absolutely understand.
Right. And that is probably the reason why you can't find anyone trading you anything above the 105 for him. That's the market right now. We're not going to be able to battle that. But for you, it might actually be a value, as we're seeing him having a capped ceiling in his value, so to speak. And it might be a good time to buy him because people are more interested in buying the rookies, the healthier, the younger versions, the ones that might have potential. You don't even know where their landing spots are. But the best point that you brought up is the completeness of the team. I have every faith in the Chargers. They were showing it last year towards the end, how they can be a dangerous team. If they only had made the playoffs, we would have a different, maybe we would have had some different results. I don't think they'll beat the Patriots per se, but for them to be maybe playing better than the Tennessee or playing better than Buffalo in that conference, it was highly possible. It was unfortunate that they had too many losses due to injuries and early on in the season.
So I actually went back to Pro Football Reference. He did have 16 games last season. I do remember him being hobbled in a couple of them, but it did not prevent him from making a start. 16 games started. So he put together the full campaign, but I know there were a few games where he was unable to finish. So injuries are definitely something to watch out for, though. He does have sort of an ankle woe here and there. I know there was a hamstring bothering him early in the season, if I'm remembering right. So injuries are definitely something to watch out for. But again, if I'm holding the 106 and I have, oh man, I want to say someone like Robbie Anderson, because I don't want to say Anderson because I personally love him. And I know that'll lead into something in a little bit, but if you have a kind of late wide receiver 2, early wide receiver 3, something like that, I would throw out the 105 and a wide receiver 3 for Gordon in a heartbeat.
Okay. All right. I'm not there yet, but you are making a very strong case.
Oh, I'm so close. I can feel it.
So close. Well, let's jump off to our next part of the show, and I want you to apply your process now in this time where rookies are just in the spotlight of the dynasty world. People love watching these rookies, want to get in, they want to absorb as much information about them because we haven't seen them on the field on Sunday. We don't know how they'll fit against, you know, the professional talent. We know what they can do. They can be dominant in the college scene. We can project it because they played against some NFL level, but they haven't ever been faced against a NFL coach scheme. They haven't had the mentality of a full-time job as a football player. So I want you to apply your process. Which rookie wide receiver we'll focus on receiver, because that's really something that I'm having a hard time with this year, because there are so many of them and they're all bunched in the same tier. Apply your process to me. Tell me about a rookie wide receiver that we should be looking out for, and what do you want to do about this rookie receiver?
So there's a guy that for me has risen immensely in the sort of post-collegiate season that these guys find themselves in now. For me, that is DJ Chark, who, I mean, again, sometimes these things, an NFL team will have a particular team burn them, who will become a free agent the next year, or the next offseason, I should say, and then they make a hard run at that player. There's something sometimes about seeing it in person that really does kind of lock you down into a prospect. And for me, it is DJ Chark out of LSU. Obviously, the passing game is a little underutilized there. Thank you, Leonard Fournette and Darius Geis. But Chark looks like a very good receiver. Now, he hasn't run a complete route tree, and even in Mobile, most of what he looked impressive on were deeper routes, goes, streaks, long posts, corner routes. That was primarily what he was, just dominating people out there. And that helps with his speed. I mean, that was obviously one of the things that was maybe best exemplified. I think he ran a 4.34. I think that was the fastest out of the receivers at the combine. Now, look, that's completely backed by his film. His long speed is there. He's able to stack corners effectively. I mean, that was one of the first things I wrote down when we were watching practices, was that he was stacking as well as some of the 6'3" guys. And look, you don't realize it until you have to glance down at his measurables. Chark is 6'3". I know he looks a little slight because he's only 200 pounds. Most of the kind of 6 foot guys that look big usually kind of go at 215 when they're that size. But I like to put it like this: Jamon Moore, who was someone that, people are going to go nuts over his size. He's 6'3" and he's 204. He looks massive, but there are 5 pounds separating him and DJ Chark. And I personally like Chark athletically a little better. Now, the big question with him is, will he be able to handle press corners? How will he adapt to NFL size? And I really want to dig into this more in the offseason about how receivers enter the league size-wise and how they are around year 2 or 3, because everyone adjusts to the game. And these guys find natural roles, and they find out how much kind of weight and muscle they can pack on while still keeping their athletic gifts that they need to compete. Now, when I look at someone like Chark, I also look at how he handles these guys. How does he handle press corners? Does he use his hands? Is he trying to bully his way through? Look, Chark has a little work on hand fighting to do, but he's beating people with his feet. There was a large breakdown between Chark and Levi Wallace that was up on ITP. That was around the Senior Bowl as well. Mike Nuttall, Matty Brown, Joe Ferriola, and Marcus Johnson put together a piece on some of the battles they'd had, because they're both out in the SEC West. I want to say SEC West. Hope I'm not getting that wrong. I'm not the world's biggest college fan.
It's okay. SEC is just Alabama and everyone else. You're good.
Right. Exactly. Basically, right. Anything else is just draft people watching. But I'll say he has been the guy for me that has risen the most. I think he has been very impressive from the Senior Bowl on. Diving into his tape, you see that he is a vertical threat that actually does pretty well. He's someone whose tape sort of flies under the radar, but he's going to be the real deal. And from what we've seen from some DLF post-combine mocks, Chark is still, at the very least, a 3rd-round rookie pick. What I did last year when Wayne Gallman would fall to the back end of the 2nd round, I would trade for the 212 to go pick up Gallman. That is what I will be doing with DJ Chark this year. It's the talent that I really believe in. I think, if he can find himself in a vertical attack, if he can find himself with, say, the Arizona Cardinals or the New Orleans Saints, if he can be a vertical weapon on a team that's going to try and push the ball downfield, that is absolutely the best type of landing spot for him. There are some other rookie receivers I've enjoyed watching. Deshaun Hamilton is another one who was impressive during the Shrine game, leveraged that and got into the Senior Bowl where he was maybe the most polished route runner there. Even guys like Cedric Wilson, again, another Senior Bowl guy that I'm going to talk about because these are just guys I've had extra exposure to. Look, Wilson's probably not going to come off the board until round 4 or 5, maybe in the NFL draft. He's going to have a few things break for him to contribute as a rookie. But if you have a deep league where you can add a wide receiver who might work out, I mean, look, big-bodied guy. I personally like the way he ran vertical routes. I know he was a little slow at the combine, but look, he stacks well. He's got good hand positioning. That's the type of thing where you have to watch these gauntlet drills. You look for guys who look like natural pass catchers, and I really liked what I was able to see from Wilson there. I liked what I was able to see on tape as well. And someone I know you'll be excited to talk a little bit about, Braxton Berrios.
Yes, my
Miami
boy.
wide receiver. Look, he's great. I've been talking about him since Mobile, and he fits every stereotype for the short, white wide receiver. He's a good technician, good hand fighter, good feet, nothing outstanding. But I mean, one of the best plays he made in a 7-on-7 was laying out for a ball on the sideline that he brought in. It was a real grit, hustle, lunch pail play. I think I've worked in all the buzzwords that I need to. Look, Berrios is another guy. He's going to have to find the right team in the NFL to have a shot to compete. But he is a competent slot guy. He can... this is going to kill me. He can start out his career like Wes Welker. He can return punts and then try and get onto the field. It's a shame that these things get thrown around so often because he's not Julian Edelman. He's much closer to Wes Welker, not an overall talent, obviously, but in how a team should look to utilize him. He can contribute on special teams as a punt returner, maybe not a kick returner, not quite big enough for me to contribute there. But I think, again, you just need something to go right for a few of these guys. That's how we get, the Spencer Wares of the world.
I think this last section really highlights, shows out the process that you put in, because you are marrying what you see on film. You're marrying the real scouting talent, scouting evaluations, and putting that into your dynasty work as well, and finding a balance, because some of these players will be great as a player contributor, but they may not be a fantasy asset. Yet there are some who are running under the radar because people are looking for their production, which is not there in college, and they automatically assume that that these players won't have a future in the NFL. But DJ Chark, of course, was hampered by not only it's a strong run game, but LSU had terrible quarterbacks, just flat out terrible. All the years that I've been watching since I have to say, even since Jamarcus Russell, that might be their last good quarterbacks at LSU.
I think so. I also want to circle back really quick. At the end of that salvo there on wide receivers and Berrios, I said that's how you get the Spencer Wares, when I meant to say that's how you get the Kareem Hunts, is guys falling into the right place. I was thinking of the Spencer Ware injury when I said it. When he got injured, that was what broke perfectly for Kareem Hunt. I couldn't not go back and correct that.
No, that's perfect. And I think this is in reference to Cedric Wilson, that things need to break it for him in order to get on the field. Wide receiver, there are chances. These players are certainly more excited about when we get to the Senior Bowl, and then suddenly they drop off because people are more excited about the underclassmen, but do not forget about them. They're important. And everything that I've heard from Mobile, your eyes, I trust the ITP guys' eyes. I trust my own fake pigskin guys who went to Mobile too.
Yes, I was going to say, I saw some of them, not necessarily during practice, but around at the bars. They seemed very great. Ran into them with Rob Waz at Waz NFL, who was a great friend I made down there as well. But yeah, look, fake pigskin was out there in full force. I was looking around for you.
I wanted to make it. I'm actually only 2 hours away from Mobile right now, but car accident. I don't have a car for a while.
We'll work it out next year.
I'm hoping for next year, definitely. But everything that I've heard was that this past Senior Bowl was actually way more exciting than the past Senior Bowls that has occurred. And that speaks to the level of talent that they were able to get in this year. And so I'm excited. I haven't forgotten about them. I'm building them into my tier, even though people may forget about them. They're there. They're there for me. So great. Thank you so much, Andrew, for just bringing out your process. So now we're going to put your process into a rapid fire mode in what my segment I would call the Rorschach Inkblot test. I'm throwing you out a player with ambiguous value right now. You're applying your process in rapid fire mode and telling me what you think about this player and, what are you going to do with him in your dynasty teams? First one I'm throwing to you, Robbie Anderson. We talked about him a little bit.
Right. Huge Jets fan here. Everyone should know that. I typically have a hat that you mailed to me at New Year's last year. One of the nicest things anyone in fantasy has ever done. Probably the single nicest gesture that I've ever had. I typically have that displayed behind me. It's a little further off camera by the LT jersey, just to get that out of the way. Robbie Anderson is a great deep threat. Phenomenal footwork out on the field. There was a ton of pieces about how he was working with Ocho Cinco in the offseason. And look, it shows. He is a very polished route runner. Gets knocked off his route a little bit, and that's partially because of size. I enjoy watching him, and I think he is a tremendous wide receiver. I think he's undervalued right now. I wouldn't be trading him away. I would be trying to package some sort of late second round pick plus a player for Robbie Anderson, because I don't think you'll get Anderson for anything. I wouldn't deal him for anything that's not like the 112. So I think you can put together a mid-second and a player to get him. Wow. He's a big buy for me.
Wow, that is amazing. Any concerns about his off-field concern? The charges that he had.
He's a bit of a knucklehead. That's literally me quoting a text I had sent to Nick Filato, who I do a lot of fantasy stuff at ITP with. Look, definitely a knucklehead. Really has to kind of stay on the straight and narrow, but the on-field production is there. The talent on field is there. He's just got to shake off this last little bit of youth and, realize the cameras are going to be on him all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Robbie Anderson was a surprise last year, and we'll see how he perhaps catch passes from Josh Rosen.
Oh, my God, Josh. Baker Mayfield would be my ideal choice, personally.
Okay. I love both of them. I still remember the time when we talked about quarterbacks for the Jets, and I still think Marcus Mariota would have been a great fit.
Oh my God, I remember that podcast. Man, that would have been tremendous.
All right. So let's move on to my second inkblot, Jarvis Landry.
I don't get it. I don't get why people don't like him. Jarvis Landry has been like the most polarizing player since he entered the league. Yes, he's not used deep down the field. His ADOT is going to be less than impressive. We're also talking about a top 10 fantasy wide receiver if you're talking about PPR scoring. Even if you're talking about some sort of variation, half point, quarter point, he's still coming up as, at the very least, a low-end wide receiver one, and he did this all with Jay Cutler and Pat Moore at the helm. Look, he's not going to be playing for the Dolphins next season. I really, really, really doubt it. He's definitely getting traded. I would hope to the Bears, where he can become Mitchell Trubisky's new, Binky, his new underneath the offense, first go-to guy. Stop overthinking this. Jarvis Landry is a perfectly fine football player that everyone doesn't like to enjoy because he's not jumping over a cornerback and a safety in the corner of the end zone. He's just catching 10 passes a game for 95 or 110 yards and one touchdown. Ooh, I go out and get him. Just do a price check on him. Find out what the guy that owns Jarvis Landry wants for him and see what you're comfortable dealing away. You're getting something of a wide receiver one. Look, the tread is still on the tire. We're not talking about a guy that's been in the league forever. So I say go out and get him. He's another one.
Fantastic. Kind of aligns with some of my thoughts. I don't understand what more do you want to ask from him? The guy has put on 4 years of production, and you're still pointing to his ADOT. I don't get it. But right. We'll see. Again, we'll see what Dynasty.
Data points in context.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's a great point. last guy, we haven't seen him play football for a whole year. And he's coming back. He's coming back to a loaded offense, catching passes from a 41-year-old Tom Brady. We are talking about Julian Edelman.
Now, look, talk about a guy that I think right now I could probably deal the 207 for Julian Edelman, and I'm going to get a Hall of Fame quarterback's favorite target out on the field. A guy who, look, Tom Brady's old again, 41, still playing very well. That's still his favorite target out there. It's still the guy that understands the offense better than anyone else, at least for the wide receiver position. If you're trying to make a run, again, we hear a lot about people being in win now mode and trading away their team and dealing firsts for people who aren't going to work out. Go deal a mid-second for Julian Edelman and get yourself 2 years of borderline wide receiver 1 production. I mean, look, when they're clicking, that offense is a whole other demon. And we saw a good, not great Patriots offense. And I think that's because Julian Edelman was missed. There's always game planning. You're always going to see the Patriots compete, especially with Bill Belichick there. You're going to see these things kind of click for them no matter what. But I'm going to take the Hall of Fame quarterback's favorite target. That's just me. I think you can deal for him. I think you can package a third for someone for him.
Great. Yeah, that is definitely helps us see, like, let's not forget, he is Tom Brady's favorite weapon. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet, but it sounds like it's cheaper than what I anticipated at the beginning. So I will maybe do a little shopping tonight.
I think maybe the best way to sum up my thoughts on Edelman, if you finished 4th last year in your Dynasty League, if you're in like a 12-team league and you finished 4th or 5th in that league, go offer, if you still have it, your 2nd-round pick straight up for Julian Edelman. Yes, you're out on one of these guys that you can talk yourself into, but we talk so much about how these rookie picks are lottery tickets, they're dart throws. I don't quite agree with that, but if you're of that mindset, deal that rookie pick. Go get Julian Edelman. Go get this guy who will give you, at the very least, a mid-wide receiver 2 production. I mean, what more do you want for your flex?
That's a good point. So, well, so those are my 3 ink blots. You've really done a very good job in showing your process and putting them together and your reasons for why you value each of these players up so far. Andrew, it's been a great night. Thank you so much for coming on to Dynasty Mind. I've been able to pick your brain. I'm really just enjoy talking with you every time. Tell us what's up for you. What are you working on? What's going on in these next few crazy months?
So right now I'm putting on the kind of polishing for the fantasy section of Inside the Pylon's draft guide. You can go check that out at itpdraftguide.com. You can also find a link for it on insidethepylon.com, where you catch great work from, again, everybody that's there. I haven't to this point mentioned Mark Schofield, who is the kind of driving force behind that site. The content he puts out, everything he does on quarterbacks is just phenomenal. Look, he hosts the Patriots podcast that I'm subscribed to as a Jets fan. I'm subscribed to Locked On Patriots, and it's because of how much of a good job Schofield does. If you want mediocre, well-measured takes, you can follow me on Twitter at @the_ATJ. And I mean, look, I basically at this point just take requests. If people want a breakdown done on someone, all they really got to do is tweet at me, and there's either a video or a piece. So once the kind of draft prep and all the draft guide work is done and we have everything pieced together, I'm gonna take a week off. I'm gonna play some Madden, and then I'm going to get right back at it with a whole bunch of running back work that I will have something special out a little later in the off season for everyone.
All right, so you heard it here. They are having a draft guide out that marries that similar process, because I can tell a lot of the guys that work inside the Pylon really apply what they see on film and apply putting the statistic in context, and now they're going to translate that for you. You don't have to do that yourself. You translate it for you in a fantasy sense. So go check it out, guys. My name is Chris Chung. I am at FF Dynasty 101. This is a feature of Fake Pigskin. Check us out on our YouTube videos. We have a lot more going on there aside from my Dynasty series. So Andrew, thank you so much again for tonight. Have a great night, and I will get in touch with you and have you scout a little bit more film for me.
It's been the best chatting with you.
All right.